Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and welcome to the 1:72 scale de Havilland Mosquito build. We're going to do the flesh next on the pilot, I think. We've only really got the black of the boots and the leather of the helmet after that. So I'm probably not even going to thin this. This is 7815, which is basic skin tone. If you were doing a more complex model figure or a bust, then this is quite often what I would use as my base coat, if you like, that you start working from, because it's sort of in the middle. You can go lighter and you can go darker. So assuming that you're doing a Caucasian figure, that is, of course. So one of the advantages of not thinning the paint means that we've got lots of control on this small area that we're painting. Always remember to do under his chin. There we go, because his mask is hanging down there to one side, and we should do his hands at the same time. Got very big hands, this chap. Okay, there we go. That brings him to life quite nicely. So that will dry fairly quickly. Not even sure we're going to need a second coat, to be honest. That's gone down so well, but we'll leave the paint in the palette just in case I decide we do. But that will do for now. So we'll put the palette to one side, and it is Humbrol 30 for our ordnance, which is next. Okay, we are going to paint these in the 30 as requested. Okay, let's see how that goes down. Yeah, that's all right. Okay, and what we can do, because we're using acrylic, just get my fingerprints off that. That was a bit of a disaster. Because we're using acrylic, it'll dry super fast, which will allow me to then paint the bottom end of this. So we'll leave the paint in the palette because we'll be using it again in a sec. There we go. And then we've got some decals to go on there, so they should look quite good when done. Right then, time to have a go at these canopy parts, the clear parts. They all need a little bit of paint on them, and I don't have any masks, so we're going to be freehanding this, not with this brush. So my plan is to put the interior colour down first, which is the Humbrol 78. Now, on the rest of the model, we did that with enamels, but I'm going to use acrylics on the canopy just because it's a bit easier to clean them up. And then once that's dry and we've cleaned it up, we can then go in with our top colours to tie it all into the camouflaging. So there will be two colours that we need to go at there, and the same with the front piece. I'm not sure on the black one what colour the glass would be at the front. It's not really covered off in the instructions, to be honest. I'm going to go with black though, because it's mainly, the little loop there is mainly on the black, under the black. So okay, so that's the plan. I just need to sort my paint out. My only acrylic paint is one of these pots that came in a starter set or gift set or something, not quite sure. Right then, I've just test fitted this canopy, and I've got to say, it's the best fitting canopy I have ever had. It is really special. It has a really thick lip here and a little one there, and they're both location points, and the fit is phenomenal. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get this show on the road. So I'm going to do my best to not go outside the edges, but it's almost inevitable at some point we will. Sometimes the difficulty with using an acrylic paint is breaking that surface tension to make it bond. And on clear parts that tends to be worse, I find. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in the edges as well. And it just helps the glass become a bit more reflective. Okay, I'm going to carry on and I'll show you what that looks like later. Feels like we're on the final straight now. I'm just tidying up the cockpit green before we put the next paint colours on, which will be the top colours. We've got both the camouflage colours needing to go onto the canopy. I find it's best to tidy up any paint that's, when you've not got masks, any paint that's gone outside of where you want it, it's best to tidy it up for each colour you put on, rather than letting it build up. It's just quicker and easier, I find, to remove the paint. Just taking the tiniest amount of paint straight from the bottle just to paint in the pilot's leather flying hat. Just needs a tiny amount, so there's no point messing around thinning paints and stuff. There we go. Happy with that. So boots are next. Same process with the boots, tiny amount of paint straight from the bottle. Okay, that's his boots on. Now, there is a little aluminium buckle on there that I want to paint in, and I'm going to see if we can do that with a paint pen, I think. Now, last thing I want to do is just give the guy a little bit of a wash, just to bring out some of that detail. And I've got to think about what colour. Black might be too dark, so I think we're going to go with a grey wash. And that's the plan. I'll just finish him off, so to speak. Right, carrying on with the painting of the canopy. Okay, we have a few remaining decals to go on. A couple that go on each of the bomb, and then in between each of the propellers on the spinner, there's a little silver rectangle that needs to go on. So we're gonna tackle those now. So the bomb has a block of yellow stenciling and a yellow stripe. They always show up really nicely, these decals on the green bomb. And I think what we're going to do is put it on the bomb so that as you look up into the bomb bay, you'll see that quite nicely. So yeah, that's what we'll do. Stripe all the way around with the join at the back here, so if things don't go to plan or they overlap or whatever, it's in the hidden part. So we'll get both decals for both bombs on. Obviously we've got spares because we're only putting half the bombs in. And then these little silver decals have some form of writing. It looks like a little screwed on plaque, actually. As I look at it, it's got little 6 little black dots around it. It's a really nice little decal. Well, that's interesting. It doesn't actually go all the way around. But that's what we'll see. So that looks okay to me. And then we've got a little stencil. Just make sure I'm getting that right. Yep, small. Small writing to the top. That looks alright, doesn't it? Right. So we've got 6 of these little silver decals to do. I'm going to chuck them all in. And just work through them. By the time I've got to the last one, it'll probably have floated off the paper. So now the trick here is to get it spot on in the middle, right on the edge by the looks of it. There, that looks smart, doesn't it? Right, that is the end of the decals on the Mosquito. Well, there is not much left, so it feels like we're getting to the end of this build. Our pilot is looking the part now. His grey wash has dried, and that's done what I've wanted to do, and just add a little bit of animation. There's no need to highlight and do some dry brushing as well. He's happy there as he is. So, time to get him off his blue tack, which we put him on pretty much at the start of the build, didn't we? So, that's been on there for a little while. Okay, he's in. Minus his legs. Right, we have a few jobs to do on the underside. I'm just test fitting that back wheel, so that's not glued in, but I understand how it goes in now. So this little square piece of plastic plugs into a hole that's just out of sight. Quite a nice little bit of engineering, that. There you go. Simple as that. So that's our tail wheel on. Looking good. You can see our bombs are in place. So I think the next thing is probably let's put some glazing in there before we start putting things here in the way. So I'm using glue and glaze. It's only a small hole, so I'm just putting a small amount on my cocktail stick. That's all the way around now. There we go. Okay, let's test fit the wheels. So there's two little slots at the back that these slip into. Obviously we used the same part as a jig. Now that goes in lovely, doesn't it? Absolutely splendid, that. So put a small amount of glue in each hole, and then a little bit on these ends that go into the slots. That means I'm not risking any glue on this part coming into contact with that. It's a little difficult to see, but it feels like that is in. There we go. Right, Bombay doors are on, so we can look at the landing gear doors now. And these two pins on each side just need a tiny blob of glue. And then they fit into the holes on the inside there. So that should be nice and easy, he says. Right, a little bit of touch up to do on there. We need that to dry, and then we can do some panel lining, but we can put the propellers on. So we're gluing a sort of a donut ring that fits inside that cup, is the only bit that we glue. So tiny amount. Put it at a nice jaunty angle. We don't want it looking regular. Right. They're both definitely on. Right, we can leave that alone for a minute while all of that is drying off. Gives me an excuse to get in and finish this canopy. I'm just wondering about gluing these parts in before we go much further. Okay. So I've got a little bit of paint to dry. I've got a little bit of touch up to do in one or two places. So I'm going to do all that off camera, and then I'll come back to you when we're ready to fit the canopies, just in case there's any issues around that. And then we can talk about weathering, which I don't want to do a lot on this, but certainly we want to do the panel lines at the very least. And we probably need to have a look at some exhaust staining, I guess. But that's probably all I'm going to do on this. I'm going to leave it fairly clean because I just think it looks quite nice as it is. Bit of clean up on the canopy, and we're nearly done. I want to do a little bit of weathering. I'm not going to go overboard with it, but what we're going to do is some panel lines, maybe a little bit of chipping. We'll see how we go and how we feel. I'm starting with panel line wash natural brown, which is going to be my panel line wash of choice for this because it works quite well on the black as well as the green grey. I do actually have this, which is stone grey for black, and when you compare the two, it's actually a lighter grey, and I prefer the darker. You know, the muck doesn't change colour just because it's on a black surface, so I prefer to use just one all the way through. So we're going to, it's been a little while since I've used this, so I don't know how well it's kept and stored. But yeah, you can see it's quite a muddy brown type colour. I'll get some of the sludge off from the bottom. There we go. And then we can add a little bit of thinner. So I'm using MIG's own brand of thinner for this, which it's quite a soft thinner actually, as in it's not too aggressive on your painted surfaces. Some thinners can be a little bit aggressive, This is quite a mild thinner, for want of a better explanation, I guess. So, just going to get that off the brush. We're ready to go. Okay. But we're going to just trace along where we want this to settle. And I'm not being particularly careful with it, but I'm not covering all the surfaces either. So wherever I've got a panel line, effectively, now here where we've got a ridge, I'm going to do that as well, and I am going to do it over the decals. Don't worry about tide marks and things like that. When we do the next step, that'll tidy all of that up. I want to make sure it goes over any details such as fasteners and rivets and the like. And don't be worried about the exact amount going in or it being even in any way. And just round any joins, as well as panel lines and the like. Any raised detail as well. There's actually more detail underneath the model than there is on the upper surfaces. Okay, when you think you've done everything, go around and check again, because there's always something you've missed in my experience. Like, I haven't done that engine nacelle. What I want to do also is just in these mud flap areas, just put a bit more darkness, some staining, a bit of pre-dirt if you like. Okay, right, so I'll carry on and get this side of the engine done and come back to you in a minute. Okay, by the time you've gone around the whole of the model putting on your enamel wash, like I have, you should find that it's dry in the areas where you started. So we can start this next phase whilst the underneath bit, which is the bit I did last, is still just flashing off. And what we're going to do is taking just a bit of tissue paper, and we're going to use the tissue paper as an abrasive, and we're just going to rub the whole area, not just where we've put the wash, but the whole thing. And we're just gently rubbing it down, and that will actually rub away your excess enamel from the upper surfaces. Now, if you've got some stubborn areas where it's not coming off, because maybe it's gone on quite thick or whatever, you can go in with a brush just moistened with a little bit of thinner or even a touch of white spirit, and just clear it away and then rub it. And I don't know whether it makes a difference or not, but I always tend to rub it in the direction of airflow. Then if you do end up with a little streak that you've not spotted, it looks like a bit of dirt and wear and tear. So that's what we're doing, but we'll rub the whole of the model while we do it. You'll find that most of what you've put down should rub away, but there will be one or two areas where it needs a little bit of support to get you where you want it to be. And the idea is we want to have it all collected in all these panel lines, as you can see here, and as you rub over it, any of these ridges that we've done, you're not going to be getting into, so they'll stay dirty. Just make sure that everything looks nice and neat. There you go. That's looking good actually. And it's just a matter of systematically going around and doing that in all the areas that you've done. So as you can see here, it's quite clear on the black where it's been, so it might be easier to see how this polishes out a little bit. There, that's looking quite good, I think. So I'll crack on, carry on doing this, and then come back to you. Right then, I want to do a little bit of chipping, not too much. So for that, I'm using an aluminium weathering pencil. I need to swap my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so as always, use some reference pictures. And looking at reference pictures, I see that there's quite a bit of chipping around the area of the spinner, so I just want to emulate that. And there's two ways of going with a pencil. You can draw it on, or you can just sort of randomly dab it. If you draw it on, you're going to end up doing something that looks a little bit more like it was done with purpose rather than natural chipping. So I'm just going to tap. So there you go, we have a little bit on there now, and we've got to try and keep it in scale so it'll be more obvious in the black areas. I'm just going all the way around the edge. Okay, I'm also going to put a little bit of chipping around this door because I believe this was the access for the crew, so that would have somewhere. They're trying to get in with all that equipment and bumping it with kit bags and all sorts of stuff. Doesn't show up very obviously on the grey, but on the black and the green it does. Right, going to do some weathering on the propeller, again with weathering pencils, and I'm actually going to start with black, which I know sounds a bit bonkers because we've got a black propeller, but there's lots of different shades of black. And if you think about chipping, and wear particularly, it's a gradual process. So what first happens is you wear through the finish, then you wear through the colour, and there's lots of different stages to that. So on our leading edge here, just gonna gently draw the pencil down, which should just give it a nice sort of dull look, and we're going to do that on all those edges. And then just going to go in and chip a little bit. So I'm just basically glancing it, and we're going to do that on both sides. A word I use a lot is subtle, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So that's our black on, and in the light you can see it. It's like little scratches in the blade. So then I'm going to go for a dark aluminium. So that's sort of older scratches, if you like, and we're going to just tap a lot more cautiously than we did with the black. Build up that colour a little bit. And in between each propeller, we're just going to chip along the edge here, like we did on the engine nacelle, but just to key it all in, really. And because we're doing it in the same way, it's going to look natural to the black that we did. We're going to go just a little heavier at the root. Now remember, this is dark, so it is meant to be quite subtle. Okay, that's the dark aluminium. Now we're going to go around and do exactly the same thing again, this time just with the aluminium. That's brighter, so again we start with caution. I'm just going around the base of the propeller and just putting a little bit of scratching around the area around where the propeller goes into the spinner. Okay, so it is subtle, but you can see the scratching effect, and you can see the chipping around the spinner. It doesn't take long, and it's not a messy process, and I think it works really, really well. So I'm going to do the other one, and I'm also going to do a little bit of aluminium chipping around places like the bomb bay door, where there might be a little bit from time to time with loading bombs and what have you. People are going to bump their heads on it and smack equipment on it and so on. So just give and get a look of being used, really. Which means we can also do a little bit of chipping around the edges there. Being careful not to draw. Now we might get a little bit of chipping along these leading edges a little bit. Okay, trying to keep it subtle all the time. Right, next we've got to deal with exhaust, and we need to have a trail that goes down the side. It tends to come from the back of the very back down, and from some colour pictures I managed to find, it's a very dark, almost black colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use smoke, and I'm going to start get myself in a good position. I'm going to start by just doing the ends of the exhausts, because they're currently all metal, so the openings need to be darkened up. You're not going to see much in the way of the smoke along the black here, so I'm just shading in and trailing it a little bit just to give it a witness, and the smoke, because it's a sort of a grey colour, will work okay like that. So I'll carry on with that and get that done, and then come back to you. So the next thing I want to do is continue with the exhaust staining, and there's always an element of sort of a browny, grimy colour in there. So I'm going to use this streaking brusher, which has a red brown. And what I'm actually going to do is, rather than using it as it's intended as a streaking brush, I'm just going to put a few and then I'm going to take a brush that's moistened with some thinners, I've got all of that on there now, and we're just going to streak it behind, which should just leave like a cloudy stain. Again, it's going to be hard to see against the black, but it will be visible. Then Starship Grime. I'm actually going to use that to touch in the end of the exhausts. So we did touch them in ever so slightly with the pencil, but this is just going to finish it off. And then with our still moist brush, just going to blend that in. That's just going to give us a nice bit of shading on the end of the exhaust there. So Couple of last things to do, not least clean my brush in a little bit of white spirit. So we are going to use a little bit of pastel just to put some dust onto the tyres. So I'm using a makeup brush, or a makeup sponge. They're cheap as chips. You can get them in packs of 10, 50, 100. And they're very similar to what Tamiya use, only not expensive. So I'm just wiping some sort of a muddy brown pastel on there, and I'm just going to wipe it onto the tyres and get that into the tread. I'm also going to wipe it onto that mudguardy type thing at the back, which, well, I'm guessing it's a mudguard. And that'll do two things. It'll take the shine out of it, make it look dull, so it'll make it look used, and it will add some dirt, which will also make it look used. Okay. And what we're going to do with my finger is just rub it off. That'll just leave it in between the treads a little bit. Again, just keeping it subtle. Okay, most important thing when you've finished using pastels is to go and wash your hands. So there we have it, the 172 scale Mosquito from Airfix, a new tool last year. What are my final thoughts now I've built the kit? Well, I have to say, I think Airfix have done themselves proud with this. It is such a well engineered kit, had no fit issues whatsoever. Highlights are the innovations around the landing gear jig, the little plastic parts that are used to mask off the landing gear bays when painting. That's a really nice idea. And the way the canopy fitted, it was absolutely perfect. One of the best fitting canopies I've ever come across. So those were the highlights for me. It generally built up very easily. I did end up cutting the legs off the pilot. I don't know whether that's something I've done, but I don't think so. Lowlights for me, actually, and this is a first for me with Airfix. I've never experienced this problem before, but one or two of the decals are out of register. So let's see if we can zoom you in to that one there. You see the 9? You see the little white in the 9? I have that in one or two places. The little crosses on the top of the wing there, you can see it as well. Now, I've never had an issue with Airfix decals before, so that has taken me a little bit by surprise. But that is definitely the only low light to this kit. Otherwise, a fantastic rendition of the kit. Now, I'm told there is an error and that the bomb bay doors should be completely smooth and the back end should be aerodynamic as it tails off, and that when they've scanned it, a version that was modified post-war, and therefore it's not 100% accurate. I'm sure that there is people that know about this stuff and that is the case. I didn't make that modification because I didn't have enough information for me to know that I was doing the right thing. So I went with the kit. So I can't really comment any further on that. What I can say is what we have got in the box fits together beautifully, is well engineered, didn't need any gap filling. It was just clean it up, stick it together, and there was a lot of fun. Tips, any tips? I suppose the only real tip comes with the exhausts, where I painted them separately first, and then we glued them together and put them in afterwards, painted the engine nacelles. Now that means that the engine nacelles need to be left off until after painting, and that has the plus side that you can then put the exhausts in and you're not trying to paint the exhausts after they've been fitted. The downside is there was one or two little areas we had to touch up where the two halves of the engine nacelles came together, top and bottom. Otherwise, it's as close to a perfect kit as you can get. So I'm going to take some photos and we'll play some music, and I will see you next time. Thanks for following the build. Thanks for looking in. I've got lots more coming, and I'll see you very soon.